Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Trade the Chain. It is July 27th, and it is Tuesday. Thank you all for joining us today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Trade the Chain.
There we have a studio malfunction right off the rip. Monty's like, you can never do it right. All right, so we have CJ and Monty with us, our crypto analyst from MarketRebellion.com. I'm here with Ryan Gorman, wearing a vintage Cool Rolling Stones shirt. And we are here we're a little happy today because obviously there's been some good price action over the week. I see some people complaining about the title, but that's okay. You're still here, you're still watching, and that's what makes it work. So without further ado, let's jump into this legal and get the show on the road.
Thank you, Alex. This is just a reminder that all content provided by Trade the Chain and Market Rebellion is strictly for informational and educational purposes only. Absolutely none of this is investment advice. It should not be construed as such.
Well, thank you for that. That was quick, short, and sweet. And any opening comments from anybody on anything before CJ and Monty start doing the dirty work?
Open interest on options and Bitcoin futures is going really, really high. And that's typically what you like to see, right? When buyers are coming back into the market. That was a point that Monty had made not only this morning, but yesterday as well. And we're seeing that continued. So I think that's going to be really interesting and important to keep in mind as we go through kind of the technical analysis and the momentum when analyzing this trend. Ryan, you look like you want to say something. What's up, my friend?
I was going to say, I forget what the exact number was that I saw, but there's Glassnode data floating around saying that a significant amount of Bitcoin has been moved off exchange into hardware wallets or cold storage, which is also indicative of at least an expected jump upward by the traders, investors, or entities making those moves. So it does seem like optimism has swung back into the markets.
I agree with that. And I just feel cheery by nature right now. So Monty looks like he has heaven's light coming down on him in the studio today. Look at him. He looks...
That's how I'm feeling today, Alex. I'm feeling blessed because as your clickbaity title suggests, Bitcoin is blazing today.
Yeah. All right, well, let's break this thing down in a little bit more detail because, I am going to show a little bit of the bearish perspective, but I do truly feel that we're starting to hit a turning point here in the trend. And there's some clear indicators that we have to pay attention to. First one here that I highlighted, I've spoke about this before, but this has to do with the DMI indicator. We finally have it breaking positive since the first time since back around roughly the top, roughly about 65K right at the top. That was the last time positive momentum had really, held the trend. And prior to that, the last time we had a breakout bullish in the DMI indicator had really been since 10K, when we were building the momentum on this original trend. So the DMI indicator is one right off the bat that I can go to and say that it looks like there's a clear turning point on the daily perspective. But I want to remove that and go forward with the Keltner channels. I haven't broken these out in a while, but got to have the Keltner channels. If we take a look, each time we get above these top bands with one standard deviation roughly, it is indicative, or it has been indicative, of the start of a new uptrend. We saw the exact same thing here. We saw the exact same thing here. And even if we were to go back further into Bitcoin's historical chart, we'd see the same nature. And, we see the inverse of it too, right? We had a period of time in which the Keltner channel flipped from support to resistance and shot us down. And once we broke below that bottom band, the bear trend really took hold. And so I am hopeful and optimistic from the bullish perspective that we are starting to see the inverse of this. I think that if we get a role reversal here and we have former resistance at 34 to 36K flip to support, I think that we can reliably call this the bottom, and we have a very high likelihood of heading up and trending in a new bullish direction. And there's just really countless indicators you can pull from that will show this perspective. I'm going to remove some of these just to give a better perspective. Look at that 20 SMA. When you can see it starting to flip up, that's huge. It's huge. Sounding like Donald Trump, but you see what I mean here. Like it's dictated the trend the entire way along. And when we first broke out and got above the 20 SMMA with strong volume, which is what we're seeing here, we're seeing volume come in. That dictated this entire uptrend. If we look at the technical ratings indicator down below here, we can see all across the bull market, it was dictated by that positive momentum. This technical ratings indicator takes a couple various indicators, specifically momentum indicators like the MACD, like the RSI, and it combines them to give a much more singular visual metric that we can look at and view very clearly. But as you can see, what we're starting to see now is a bullish flip up. And so, it is looking very bullish on the daily charts. The one thing that I will show to kind of bring us back to reality here, I suppose, is the weekly chart. Let me clean some of this up. We've seen a clear breakout from this falling wedge. I think one of the greatest catalysts to this most recent bull trend here and breakout was the fact that we got this weekly close, and this candle that closed on Sunday was an incredibly bullish hammer candle, and it is precisely what you want to look for. We also got a very bullish hammer candle a few weeks back, but we just didn't have the rebound in price above the SMMA that we're seeing right now. Also, DMI indicator is a lagging indicator. So while we're starting to see bullish momentum touch up now, we are not seeing it fully come all the way through. Last bearish metric that I'll show on the weekly chart, and I'm very bullish on the daily, but I have to say I want to stay grounded, and I want to give us a objective perspective from the weekly chart as well. And that primarily comes from the Keltner channels. We're not above the top band in terms of the weekly Keltner channels just yet. And until we get that, I think we still have some work cut out for us from the bullish perspective. As you can see here, we're starting to run into resistance at that middle band on the weekly. And, ideally for confirmation, I want to see something like this, or I want to see something like this to start a new bull trend, a break above and a consolidation above the top or middle band. You want to look for something similar to what we sort of got here at the start of the bull run in late 2020. So that's what I have to present so far today. But overall, I think we're very bullish on the daily and shorter term timeframes, but the weekly is we're still seeing some macro resistance levels on the weekly chart. But what do you guys think? I mean, are you excited? Does something feel different?
I feel like it does. I feel like something does feel different. I see the attitudes amongst people in our community, for instance, and I'm sure in yours as well. There's just that midsummer sunshine that's coming through. One of the things I definitely want to hear Monty's thoughts on it before we move into Ethereum and altcoins. So for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think CJ hit all the major technical points there. But speaking to that feeling that you guys are talking about, I think you can attribute that feeling to some of the things we were talking about at the start of this episode. We were talking about increased institutional interest in Bitcoin. It feels like that's coming back. And, just in terms of the volume profile that we've seen over the last 72 hours, it's just so much different than what we've seen over the past 3 months. We're finally getting some price action, and that definitely means something. And, I agree with CJ. If we can get that confirmation, I think that is what, is really going to dictate when we're starting that next leg up. And, given what we're seeing on the daily and hourly chart timeframes, I agree that we could be approaching that next leg up in this bull market.
Do you think it's going to happen real quick? Do you think it's going to happen sooner than what we've we're pretty much on the same page, or have been in the past, on the second leg up? Do you think, Monty, it's going to have a little premature start to it?
No, I still, think maybe October, November is a realistic time frame for when we could start that next leg up. I think we could be getting potentially a bit ahead of ourselves here. We haven't broken 42K. We got a nice short squeeze, got some very positive price action. But until we, break some critical levels and establish a new lower high, which is something I'm going to talk about with ETH, I still think we could potentially consolidate for, as long as another month. That being said, it does feel like, it could come sooner than that because of all the, the headlines, the institutional interest in the space. But based on what we're seeing technically, I still think that, 1 to 2 month time frame on that next leg up is a realistic expectation.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there, Monty. It's not going to happen sooner, most likely. I mean, rallies in Bitcoin haven't traditionally started in the summer to begin with, so I think fall is the right time frame there.
All right, four more weeks of hurt then. Or at least a slow climb. It's interesting because you showed the volume on that on Bitcoin, which is just it's been pretty cool. It is blazing in my opinion as far as what our 7-day price action's been. So I don't think we were clickbaity on the title, folks. I'm just saying, little biased opinion.
And Alex, to your point, if you pull up the Trade the Chain dashboard, I think this is another thing that is a critical difference and may indicate a potential turning point in the trend, is that look at the relative trading volume across the board on the right side. The relative trading volume is blazing, as you would say, especially in Bitcoin, which is really, really great to see. I mean, I think it's been weeks that we were just staying at, minus 20% relative trading volume each and every day. And so to see a massive surge with this bullish engulfing candle, it's raising my eyebrows, I have to say, I must admit.
I agree, sir. I agree. All right, let's go to ETH. Monty, we like to call you the resident ETH guy because you, long time ago, started doing it first. So let's take a look at that and also how that is affecting alts, because a lot of viewers in altcoins, a lot of us in altcoins, and we want to see, is this having the same movement in parallel with Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, for the most part it is, Alex, but there are a lot of differences in terms of interim price action. And CJ was talking about how he was bullish on the 1 day and 1 hour time frame for Bitcoin. I think ETH is looking almost like it is set for reversal. And I just want to start with the candlesticks here. So first and foremost, we have this shooting star candle. This is typically indicative of a reversal or a top of a trend. And it makes sense given the critical levels we're hitting. I talked about for Bitcoin how, I wasn't going to be really convinced that we weren't still in for some interim negative price action until we put in a new lower high. For ETH, that level, is about right here at approximately 2350. As you can see, we whipped above that level, but we didn't close above it. And until we close above it and put in a new interim lower high, I still think there's the possibility for, further consolidation in this range here, in this sort of descending formation that we've been forming over the last 3 months. And also, take a look at the volume down here. If we don't get volume that is more significant than the volume we saw yesterday, and, this doji candle sticks as it is here, I do think there is a good likelihood of a further, retest of these lower levels. Now, that being said, a lot of ETH's price action is obviously contingent on that of Bitcoin. And, CJ laid out some pretty bullish cases there. Now, one thing that I think is definitely worth noting that some of you may have noticed already is the discrepancy in the placement between the moving averages of Bitcoin and ETH. So here's where ETH is at. It's relatively close to the moving average, wicking down to it as recently as today. Whereas if you take a look at Bitcoin, this thing is still showing a large positive divergence from its moving average. If we do come back and retest this moving average in Bitcoin with a move back down to 35K, that could be more significant in terms of negative price action for ETH, because that would mean a break below this level. And we don't really have much support again until the psychologically critical level of 2K. So in terms of, technical factors, I think ETH is in a precarious situation here. If you've been riding profits from, this previous week, I would suggest possibly taking profits on here. That's how I am trading this market. I took a little bit of profit on a trade I entered earlier in the week. I'm more than happy to do that based on what we've been seeing over the last few months and based on what I'm seeing right now in terms of, technical factors. But Alex, you asked me about what this could mean for alts, right? And one thing I thought was definitely worth noting was, some of DeFi's leading investors are backing a new options protocol. And I think that that's one thing that could definitely be a leading contributor to some positive ETH price action is more institutional interest in ETH. And, right now, ETH options aren't traded, nearly as prominently as Bitcoin options are. I think that, some more institutional on-ramps for both ETH and DeFi could be incredibly beneficial to the price action for ETH. But right now, it's just, not exactly there yet. I do think that for the most part, it's going to move with, Bitcoin in the interim. So the institutional interest that's flowing into Bitcoin will kind of have a bleed over effect into ETH. But in order for, some real, positive organic growth for ETH, we need that institutional interest to have parallels for ETH as it does for Bitcoin. And, it's just not there yet. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in terms of big picture, but also in terms of small picture, just be cautious because the technicals are telling us that we could see a reversal in the trend here soon.
Interesting. So basically what you're saying is you're mirroring CJ on Bitcoin, which is we're getting a little positive price action a few days in a row, enough to excite people, but we're still in that cautious period.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, CJ talked about waiting for confirmation. I think that is critically important in this market. There's a lot of euphoria right now, and waiting for confirmation is key to making sure you don't get burned. So I'm waiting for a candle body close above these critical levels, marking a new lower high, because I think that is one of the most, prominent marks of a new trend being established.
If I may, I also just want to make one last point with Monty and your concept of, how ETH and the alts have behaved. This has been a rally in Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market collectively in which Bitcoin dominance has actually gone up. So we're seeing Bitcoin rally more than anything else in the market, basically. So that shows me that we're still early on in an authentic trend. Typically how trends form in the cryptocurrency market is that, they start with big buys in Bitcoin, big spot buys in Bitcoin, maybe some retail or maybe some institutional interest. And then retail interest ultimately is what fuels the alts and what fuels Ethereum and a lot of, those ignition assets that we like to talk about. So that's definitely one thing that's been different, but I think it is still promising and not out of the ordinary because Bitcoin has led the way in the past and it's had that slingshot effect that we love to articulate about.
It's like car racing. I like it. Let's use all the car racing terminology we can while talking about Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Was that before Ricky Bobby?
Slingshotting, of course. Come on.
Yeah, a little shake and bake action.
The price chart.
What's that?
I say ETH drafting Bitcoin up the price chart.
Exactly. See, that's the kind of talk I like to hear. All right, so let's go into the news article of the day, and this is interesting. Ryan, what can you tell us about this as I pull it up for you?
Yeah, sure. So this is this kind of came out of nowhere, this announcement, right? Fireblocks, which is under quite a bit of fire from some of its customers, pun not intended, has raised $310 billion in a Series D round. That gives them $489 million altogether, and a valuation of $2 billion. Fireblocks is one of the leading white label crypto custody solution providers out there, and they have a unique way of looking at it that's similar. Well, not unique. Them and Curve both take a similar approach through MPC and multi-sig wallets. And I guess what was surprising about this is not necessarily that they raised the money, but the timing of the announcement, because just last month, Stakehound went public and is filing a lawsuit against Fireblocks saying that they lost $74 million of ETH. And that was from a large part of that was from a liquidity pool of a project that we know the founders of. And, that money was lost because the keys were deleted. So you need 3 of the 4 keys to open up a wallet. 2 of them were lost, and Stakehound has accused Fireblocks of doing so. So it makes you wonder if the investors in Fireblocks are confident that they're not at fault, if Fireblocks has conclusive proof that they had nothing to do with losing these wallet keys, or if part of this fundraise was potentially to cover the losses that may be incurred throughout the court proceedings in determining who's liable for this. So, I mean, the whole thing is kind of bizarre, actually, if you think about it.
Let me ask this into the chat real quick. People comment if you were, holding your crypto with a third-party custodian and something like this came up where they're being accused of losing the keys. 74 million is no small number. Would you still keep your crypto with them? Because the whole point is to have third-party safety, right, Ryan? I mean, to bring that comfort level. And Monty, he'd have to. I mean, he'd be working at Starbucks if something like this happened.
So would I. I'd be working at Gold and Starbucks. But it's worth noting that Fireblocks has about 450 clients, about $1 trillion in digital assets, and they haven't had any issues, at least publicly disclosed issues, until now. So it's not like they have a habit of this. There aren't any rug pulls here. This isn't some kind of scam that was incurred like in some DeFi projects.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like simple human error, a very costly human error that they are potentially liable for nonetheless. But this isn't due to a lack of security or proof that they're, vulnerable to attacks. It's unfortunate, I think, all around, because it did significantly hurt that project and that the money was lost from. And, it also is a poor reflection on Staycount, which, if I'm not mistaken, they haven't had any issues with hacks or vulnerabilities either, have they, guys?
Not yet. There's always that first time. But I mean, CJ, Monty, what are your thoughts on this? Fireblocks raising $310 million in a D round, so it's not like they haven't, gone to the street before for money, and then also simultaneously going through this $74 million loss that is being blamed on them for allegedly losing the keys.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, first I want to say, Fireblocks, they don't do any retail business, right? It's all institutional facing. So one of the most important things when you're dealing with institutions, and we've seen this in crypto time and time again, institutions won't enter the space unless, they are 100% confident in, the credibility, the legitimacy, and the regulational clarity of the space they're entering. So the fact that they're still able to raise this much money following that sort of, misstep, I think is encouraging in the sense that it shows that institutions are still very much interested in, crypto on-ramps. Speaking to the 74 million Ethereum loss, I mean, that is something that obviously cannot happen. Private key management can definitely be tricky, especially if, you're new to the crypto space. But if your business is running, managing institutional capital and moving it around the crypto space, then this is something that just should not ever happen. So I don't know. It is interesting, the timing of these events too. Like if the funding would have came first and then this hack, that would have made a bit more sense, or not even a hack, but just this loss of funds. But it's kind of vice versa. So I'm not too sure what to make of it.
I think this will continue to happen from time to time in various cases. I saw we had a question a little bit earlier about having a crypto wallet that would just like crap out like a USB stick after a while. Common misconception: if you have a Ledger wallet or a Trezor, the coins aren't actually stored in the wallet or the hardware device. They're stored on the blockchain. And so as long as you have your private keys, it doesn't matter if you break the device or if Ledger goes out of business or if any of those companies, as long as you maintain the private keys and you're the only one who has them, then you can access your Bitcoin or crypto from any computer in the world, as long as it's got internet. So, yeah.
You know what's interesting about that, CJ, is that there's 3 points for a ledger. There's the physical device. There's your PIN number that you put into a ledger when you first plug it in, and then there's your secret phrases. Do you know, for everybody out here, that any 2 of those you can lose and still reactivate a ledger? You can lose the actual ledger and get another one and activate it, reboot it as your old one. You can lose your you can lose your seed phrases, literally, and with the remainder, reboot another one with a remap. You can lose your PIN number and still get into your Ledger wallet if you have the others. It's very interesting.
Huh.
Yeah,
I would suggest not losing any of the three.
Now,
However,
don't lose any of it. Don't lose any of it.
Yeah, please don't lose your seed phrase. I thought that I didn't back up my seed phrase to a wallet that got destroyed over the weekend, and I had a mini stroke until I realized I had it backed up. I was thankful.
Did you? Here's a question, Ryan and everybody else. Has anybody ever lost the data necessary for them to be locked out of a wallet and have never recovered it?
Yes.
Yeah,
I had a fraction of a Bitcoin in it, but it was nothing substantial.
yeah, it's happened to me too back in the day. I think I was mining, and I just had the info saved on like a folder on my desktop, like a total noob, and lost it.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about the loss.
Well, obviously, that's a good story if you don't want to talk about it. All right, very cool. Ryan?
Before we go, because I know we're up against it, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Simon Yu and Stormex. They announced today a 9 million funding round for a rewards debit card for growth. They're going to use the funds to, improve the app interface, make customers make it easier for them to sign up for the debit card, and of course to expand partnerships and sponsorships in the real sports and esports world. So, congrats to Simon and the team, well deserved, and looking forward to big things from them going forward.
We got to hit him up for free tickets to the Portland Trailblazer games,
especially when Portland plays in Puerto Rico.
That being said, I want to also close out with a shout out to DJ Crypto and our longtime Trade the Chain member, Marky. Thank you very much for hitting us up with super chats. That being said, tomorrow is Hump Day, and we will be back with a new episode. Let's keep the momentum rolling. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't on your way out the door today. And hang on to your handlebars as always, guys.
Thanks, everyone.